Hey, welcome back. So in a section about programming basics, it would probably help to step back for a moment and consider what, exactly, programming even is. First, let's consider where computers fit into the bigger picture of society. So as humans, we have the ability to apply creativity, imagination, and intuition to solve problems. Things no computer can match, at least for now. But computers are also much faster and less error-prone at certain kinds of tasks than we are. And that's where programming comes in. Programming is all about humans telling computers what to do using a type of language called a programming language that a computer can understand. For example, let's say we want to count the number of times a particular word appears in a text file. We can do this in an automated fashion by using a programming language to explain to a computer how to perform this task step by step. In a sense, these instructions we write in a programming language, which are commonly referred to as code, hence all those things you've heard about coding and learning to code, are quite similar to the kind of normal writing we do every day, like writing an email to a colleague to make a specific request. And just like an email is a group of sentences assembled to convey a certain message, a batch of code written to accomplish a specific purpose is called a program. But before we can code our own programs, we first need to learn the language, at least a little of it. Actually, you'll be surprised at how much we'll be able to accomplish early in the course with just a smidgen of code. Now, there are lots of programming languages out there, but in this course we'll be using Python, which is a popular and widely used programming language that is especially well suited for automation tasks. Like other programming languages, Python has a vocabulary consisting of special, reserved words that we'll use as the building blocks of our code. And to put Python, or any other language for that matter, to work for us, we'll need to learn the basics of how to combine and arrange these words in a way that describes what we want the computer to do. This arrangement is called the syntax of the language. Now, for those of you who have ever attempted to learn a second human language, this may sound daunting, but fear not. Communication with a computer is much simpler and more structured than communication between humans, and we only need to learn a very small subset of a programming language to do some really cool things with it. So speaking of those cool things, here are some of the broad categories of things we can ask for a computer's help with. First, there's input, which is getting data from the outside world, such as reading from a file or receiving input from a user. Then there's output, which is displaying the results of executing programming code on a screen or storing those results in a file. Then there's conditional execution, which is executing or not executing some programming code based on specified logical conditions. Then a really big feature that programming languages give us is repeated execution, which allows them to pass a set of instructions to the computer repeatedly, usually with some variation. And finally, programming languages allow us to give a set of instructions a name so that we can reuse that same set of instructions throughout the program. Now, throughout this course, we'll revisit these forms of communication and their syntax as needed for different automation techniques. Remember, while this is fundamentally a course about automating tasks with Python, you'll also learn some of the fundamentals of the Python language itself along the way. Which begs the question, why choose Python in particular for automating tasks? Well, for one thing, Python has a very straightforward and intuitive syntax, which reads quite a bit like a human language, and can often be followed, at least somewhat, by people who haven't even programmed before. Python can also be applied to an extremely wide range of applications aside from simply automating tasks, including web development and machine learning. So you can actually use what you've learned in this course as a springboard into entirely different domains and career paths. Further, Python is an extremely popular language, which results in the creation of many specialized Python libraries or modules, basically collections of pre-written Python code that extend the language's capabilities in accomplishing certain kinds of tasks more easily. In fact, most of our work in this course will involve one or more of these libraries or modules. So one potential downside to Python is that it is what is called an interpreted language, which means it needs to be translated or compiled by another program before it can be run on a computer. Now, we don't have to worry about doing any of that translating ourselves, fortunately, but this added step in the overall process can make Python slower than non-interpreted languages. However, the most expensive aspect of writing software is almost always the time it takes to create it. And time is money, right? So a language that allows people to solve problems faster is worth its virtual weight in gold. Okay, so now that we have a general understanding of what programming languages are and why we use them, up next, we'll explore where all that programming code actually goes. That is, the environment, or at least an environment, where we can do programming. I'll see you then.